Hello, Accelerated Math. Today we are going to start working on solving absolute value equations. This one gets a little bit tricky, so please make sure you have your notebooks out and do some of these examples with us. For the most part, you're going to understand what to do, but there are a few tricks involved. First, let's talk about absolute value. Yeah, we can erase, but since I'm on a different platform, I'm just going to write it in here. Absolute value of 12 is 12. Absolute value of negative 7 is 7. Absolute value of 17 is 17. Absolute value of 29 is 29. Remember, it's how far away from 0 a number is. So absolute value of negative 31 would just be 31. Absolute value of negative 26 would be 26. Absolute value of negative 39 would be 39. And absolute value of 5 is just 5. Remember, absolute value is always positive. So, definition. You don't have to write this one down. Consider as the distance between 0 and that number on a number line. It is always positive. This is the one that we need to make sure you pay attention to. So now we're going to look at the equations. The absolute value of x is 12. So what number is 12? Here's 0 on a number. What number is 12 away this way and 12 away this way? So on the right-hand side, it would be a positive 12. On the left-hand side, it would be a negative 12. We have two answers that have an absolute value of 12. Same thing with the absolute value of x is 5. Here's 0. I want 5 that side of a 0, and I want 5 that side of 0, which gives me a positive 5 and a negative 5. Two answers. So when we look at an equation, we already did this. 3 away would be a positive 3. 3 away this way would be a negative 3. Again, two answers, and this is going to come into play. The absolute value of x plus 2 equals 7. What is the absolute value? So I know that my absolute value is going to be 7. So it's either going to be a positive 7 or it's going to be a negative 7. And I'm basically going to solve my equation for both a positive 7 and a negative 7. So this could be 5. This could be negative 9. Because either way, I'm going to get 7 or negative 7, and the absolute value of those equals our 7 up here. So we have two answers. X could either be 5, or it could be negative 9. Either one would work. So here's where I want you to put this into your notes. And I want you to put basically everything on this whole page. Put everything on the page. So pause the video and write everything down, and then we'll talk about it. An absolute value equation is an equation that contains an absolute value expression. So here are a couple examples. This is the big part. There are two numbers that will make the equation true. So you will have two answers. You will have the positive case and you will have the negative case. Because if x is the absolute value of x is 5, I'm going to have a positive 5 and I'm going to have a negative 5. So I'm going to have two cases. So let's practice. Write the problem down. We're going to show all of our work. So it is an equation. I don't need that quite yet. But basically, I am solving for x. It's 5 away from 0, so it can be x minus 3 equals the positive case, which is positive 5, or x minus 3 equals a negative 5. And I'm going to solve for both of them. I'm not going to quite make that so long. So we're going to start with this one. Simple, add 3 to both sides. X equals 8. Do the same thing over here, add 3 to both sides. Here, x would equal a negative 2. So our answer, x equals 8 or negative 2. So if I plug this back in, 8 minus 3 equals 5. Negative 2 minus 3 equals a negative 5. Both of those have an absolute value of 5, which is what we're asking for. So we have 2 answers. And let me be very clear. If you do not have 2 answers, I'm going to mark it wrong. Otherwise, it's solving equations like I normally would. Let's do another one. Absolute value of 2x minus 8 equals 6. So that means absolute value is 6, so it could either equal a negative 6 or a positive 6. So I rewrite it. 2x minus 8 equals a positive 6. 2x minus 8 equals a negative 6. I have the positive case here. I have the negative case over here. So go ahead and do the math. I'm going to add 8 to each side. So I get 2x equals 14. Divide by 2. For the positive case, x could equal 7. Do it again over here. I'm going to add 8 to both sides. 2x equals negative 6 plus 8 gives me a positive 2. Divided by 2, x equals 1. So x equals 7 or 1. Both answers, or I'm going to count it wrong. 2 times 7 is 14, minus 8 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2, minus 8 equals a negative 6, and both of them have an absolute value of 6. Let's do this one. I want to remind you of something, because if you've already written it down and started doing it, you are wrong. One thing that we talked about, absolute value is always positive. This is not a positive answer. We cannot solve this one. That's our answer, cannot solve. Because absolute value is always positive, and this absolute value is equaling a negative answer, we cannot solve it. It is impossible. That doesn't work. So this is a cannot solve. And that is a very valid answer for one of our equations. So let's do a little bit of practice. Pause the video and do them if you want to. Otherwise, here we go. Absolute value of x is 4, so I could have a positive case. I could have a negative case. Absolute value of x minus 8 equals a negative 1. Look at the negative. Absolute value cannot be a positive or cannot be a negative. So this is a cannot solve question. Both of these have positive answers, so we can solve them. If you want to pause the video and try them, do that. So on this side, I'm going to have x plus 1 equals a positive 2. X plus 1 equals a negative 2. I'm going to subtract 1 all the way through. So x equals a 1 or x equals a negative 3. So x equals 1 or negative 3. There's our answer on that one. Over here, 3x minus 2 equals a positive 10. 3x minus 2 equals a negative 10. I'm going to add 2. 3x equals 12. Divide by 3 for the positive case. X could equal 4. Do the same thing over here. 3x equals, now it's a negative 8. So divide by 3, x equals negative 8. thirds or negative 2 2/3. So x equals 4 or negative 2 2/3. And I don't care if you use the fraction or the mixed number or a decimal. There it is. If you use a decimal, you better be using 2 6/10 repeating. So now we're going to get a little bit trickier. Write this one down in your notebooks and notice the difference. Here we have something on the left-hand side of the equation that is outside of the absolute value bars. We are going to get rid of that first. I know many of you are looking at this and thinking it's a cannot solve. Not yet. We have to get rid of that -8 first. So before we do anything, we're going to add 8 on each side. Now I have the absolute value all by itself. -2 plus 8 gives me a 6. Now we have it equal to a positive number. Now we can do it. 2x plus 4 equals a positive 6. 2x plus 4 equals a negative 6. Now we can solve it. I'm not going to take the time to solve it, but you would know how to do it. Do not jump to conclusions right away with this until you have absolute value by itself. And right now, it's not by itself. Same thing with this problem. Do not jump to conclusions. We got things outside of the absolute value bars. So, whoops, I meant to erase. Let's get this all erased. Oh, maybe. There we go. Okay. So let's get rid of everything that is outside first. We're going to subtract 12 from both sides. So I get -5 times the absolute value of -x plus 4 equals, this would be a -15. We're multiplying. This is technically saying we're multiplying. So we're going to divide by a -5, divide by a -5. So now I have my absolute value by itself. -15 divided by a -5. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. 15 divided by 5 is a 3. Now I have a positive answer. Now I can do -x plus 4 equals a positive 3. -x plus 4 equals a -3. I can solve for my two cases and get my answer. So please make sure you get the absolute value by itself before you decide if you cannot solve it. If we got to this point down here and it equaled a -3, then we could say cannot solve. But because it equaled a positive answer, we can solve it. Try these two on your own. Pause the video and do them, and then come back and see how you did. Absolute value is not by itself, so I'm going to subtract the 4 first. These cancel out, and now I have absolute value by itself. 5 minus 4 is 1. So now I can do x plus 1 equals a positive 1. X plus 1 equals a -1. Subtract 1 all the way through. X equals 0. X equals -2. So the answer here would be 0 or -2. Let's do the second one. Got a little more to do before we get our absolute value by itself. First, just like normal equations, we're going to subtract 5. So I have 2 times the absolute value of 3x minus 2 equals 2. Now, because we're multiplying by 2, I'm going to divide by 2. So the absolute value of 3x minus 2 equals 1. So I'm going to solve it. 3x minus 2 equals a positive 1. 3x minus 2 equals a -1. Add 2. 3x equals 3. Divide by 3. X equals 1. Do the same thing over here. I get 3x equals a positive 1. X equals 1/3 or 3/10 repeating if you do a decimal. So please make sure you take your time and make sure you know if you can solve it or not. Get the absolute value by itself. This is definitely going to take some practice. So your 1.5 homework is in Go Formative. You do that after you watch this video. So this week, we have a few things that we are going to be doing. First thing, if we haven't already, you are going to finish your 1-1-1-1-3 quiz. We're going to talk about literal equations again and absolute value equations. Then at the end of this week, you have another practice test. We have a quiz next week on 1-4-1-5, but it is also going to include 1-1, 1-2, and 1-3. Not quite as many problems. Most of them will be from 1-4-1-5, but there will be some from the previous lessons. So this week you have these 4 things to do. Next week, only 2 things. We are going to take the 1-4-1-5 quiz, and then we are going to start our next unit, which is on inequalities. It is very similar to our equations, and it is a self-paced unit. Sorry about the long video. Hopefully we are okay. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, good luck.